Singapore is cheaper than Kuala Lumpur.
What?
And that is a very interesting statement that I just saw this today. And last week, one of the member of parliaments from Singapore mentioned about this. And it says that the foods, the hawker meal in Singapore is twice as cheap compared to the food in Kuala Lumpur. And that's very interesting, right? Like, people are talking about Singapore is one of the most expensive cities to live in right now. Let's talk about the cost of living as relative to the monthly salary. One of the statistics that he came out is about the cost of a meal and also the median salary per month. And he pointed out that an average hawker meal will cost around $5 and every month for the median salary of Singapore is around 5,197 Sing dollars as for last year 2023. And that means that $5 for a meal, it only costs around 0.1% of the median salary, which I just mentioned, 5,197 Sing dollars. That's very logical. Like if you compare Malaysia, if you earn 5,000 ringgit in Kuala Lumpur, having a chicken rice, for example, or a meal, a hawker meal, it might cost you at least 10 ringgit in Kuala Lumpur, depending on which area. I would say it's 8 to 10 ringgit. And that's actually the difference. Can you see that? Like for example, if you are saying that 10 ringgit and also here 5 Sing dollars, and you don't convert the Sing dollars, if you convert it, it becomes like 17 Sing dollars. And definitely be more expensive. And Kuala Lumpur will be cheaper. But we just talk about the cost of living, the cost of the meal as relative to the median income, and also for cost of living of that country. You will see that actually it's cheaper to have a meal in Singapore. How can that even possible? Right, that's not even logical. Singapore is so expensive, blah blah blah. Alright, so yeah, no doubt Singapore is expensive, but it comes to a lot of different factors. Like for example, the car is expensive. Okay, owning a house is expensive, and the medical cost is also very high. And as a Malaysian who have been living in Singapore for almost 3 years and have working in Singapore for almost 3 years, and I can make comparisons as what I see the cost of living between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. And all this while, having a hawker meal in Singapore is definitely cheaper compared to having a meal in Kuala Lumpur based on the local salary. Like for example, a very good example, people are talking about disposable income. Okay, disposable income is about how much can you save after paying for a bill, for expenditure, for rent, and so on. So in this video, I'll talk about 3 aspects: the food, the transport, and the rent. Okay, these 3 things will actually differ why KL is actually somehow a bit more expensive compared to Singapore, or maybe in some aspect, Singapore is more expensive. Okay, let's make some comparison in these 3 aspects.
2,000 years later.
The first thing is the food. So imagine you're having a meal. As I mentioned just now, a hawker meal costs around 5 Sing dollars. Okay, that's for a plate for chicken rice. Let's compare chicken rice. A chicken rice in Kuala Lumpur and chicken rice in Singapore. Singapore will cost around 5 Sing dollars, and in KL it costs around 9 to 10 ringgit. Assuming that there are 2 people, one in KL and one Singapore, one is earning 5,000 ringgit and the one is earning 5,000 Sing dollars. That 5 Sing dollars is actually doesn't mean a lot to him. Why? Because it's only around 0.1% of the whole salary. Meanwhile, for the 10 ringgit for chicken rice, you earn 5,000 ringgit. And that's almost around 1 times higher. So can you see the difference? The purchasing power in Kuala Lumpur is lower by at least 100%. So the purchasing power for Singapore is actually, or even for Singaporeans that are working in Singapore, is actually higher. If you want to go for a same chicken rice for at hawker store or where, you just assume 5 Sing dollars and also one is for 10 ringgit. And that's the comparison that I see. And that's why the Member of Parliament of Singapore pointed out that actually it's cheaper to have a meal around 5 Sing dollars in Singapore and compared to 10 ringgit probably in KL. And the second thing is about the transport. And in Singapore, you don't actually need a car because it's not a necessity. For example, like if you don't have a car, you can take public transport in Singapore, because Singapore basically, for most places, it can be accessed by public transport, either by MRT or by buses. Because having a car in Singapore is super expensive, and because of a COE, it's called Certificate of Entitlement, depending on the category of car. And the category A is the cheapest, followed by B and C. It will be getting more and more expensive depending on the capacity of the engine and so on. That's how they see it. That's why having a car is so expensive. The reason is that they want to curb traffic congestion, which can be a serious issue for Singapore if there's no regulations to control the ownership of the car in Singapore. Okay, that's why they have COE, and the car is so expensive. That's the second thing. And for Malaysia, usually you need a car, unless you're working in an area where it can be accessed by MRT. Usually at the center of KL, there people take MRT or LRT. But other than that, people are actually driving. And driving or having a car is a common way for us to commute around Kuala Lumpur, or a Greater Klang Valley, which is actually the extended area of Kuala Lumpur. And therefore you need a car. Okay, no matter how, so you need a small car for you to commute around. And even if you want to go somewhere nearby restaurants to buy food, you also need to drive. So that's actually a norm in Malaysia. So that's why if you are in Singapore, you don't have to buy a car, and that actually save a lot. If you are in Malaysia, if you want to buy a car, you have to pay for a monthly installment for car loan. And that could be very expensive depending on the type of car that you're buying. Okay, that's the difference. Third one is the rent. And as you know, Singapore, the rent is very, very expensive. The first thing is that, especially after COVID, the rent is so expensive. It just skyrocketed all the way. And last time, when I just went to Singapore in 2021, I went to Singapore. At the time, one common room only cost around 700 Sing dollars. A common room is a room that's without toilet. So it's in HDB as well. And it costs around 700 Sing dollars. And now it costs around 1,000 Sing dollars at least, or plus minus, depending on the areas that you are staying in Singapore. And that's actually a huge increase for the rent. And the rent is super expensive because of the limited spaces in Singapore, and also because of supply and demand issues, where nowadays there are so many foreigners, especially Malaysians, to work in Singapore. You see the huge demand for HDB and also common room, all different kind of room for rent. Alright, for Malaysia, the rent is also expensive, but it depends on the area, and you can choose to stay a bit farther away from a city center if you have a car. And nowadays, actually there are a lot of places, especially apartment and a condo, now it's now going for to rent out a room. I think it's not so hard to get a room in Kuala Lumpur, in Greater Klang Valley, or outside of Kuala Lumpur. So provided that if you rent the area, you must have a car. So it's easier for you to commute around the area. So that's the difference. And these are the three things that I want to compare between Malaysia and Singapore. I would say that he's not wrong for the Singapore Member Parliament. He's not wrong in the sense that he just pointed out based on some statistic. And indeed, it's actually cheaper for locals, especially Singaporeans, to have a hawker meal for a plate of chicken rice, which costs you around $5 to $16. And in Malaysia, it will cost you around at least 10 ringgit. So that is possible. You see the differences of purchasing power, where it's cheaper to have a meal in Singapore. But the rising cost of living has been an issue. The inflation is not happening, not only in Singapore, Malaysia, but everywhere. And pick an example of London. And basically everything just skyrocketed for the prices, for the rent, and so on. So not only Malaysia, Singapore, but the whole world is a trend that is haunting the whole world right now, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. So what do you think about the cost of living in both Kuala Lumpur and Singapore? And I'm very interested to know about what you think. Or are you someone that's working in Singapore right now or working in KL right now? So please leave a comment down below. And if you are interested in this kind of content, please don't forget to subscribe me so I can make more videos like this in the future. I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!